I always thought it would be just another weekend, two guys hanging out, eating junk food, roughhousing, like we always had since middle school. But something felt different this time. Not in the obvious way. Not something you could point to and say, there, that's when it changed. It was subtle, like a quiet shift in the air, barely noticeable, but enough to make your skin tingle without knowing why. His name is Cole. We've been friends since the 7th grade. He moved into the house across the street with his mom after his parents split. I was the first kid to knock on his door, ask if he liked video games, and invite him over. Since then, we've been tight, same schools, same football team, even worked the same lifeguard job one summer. I always admired Cole, not just because he was built like a damn superhero, broad shoulders, that sharp jawline, the kind of guy girls tripped over themselves for, but because there was something grounded about him, like he knew who he was, even when the rest of us were pretending. And me, I was the quieter one, observant. I've always been the guy who'd rather sit back and take everything in before speaking. I'm the one who notices when someone's smile doesn't quite reach their eyes, or when they laugh a second too long to cover something up. That's probably why I noticed it first, whatever it was. Building between us. We're both in college, now different campuses, different majors, but we make it a point to reconnect once a month. No excuses. We crash at one of our places, play old games, watch terrible movies, and just hang out like nothing's changed. This weekend, he came over to mine. He tossed his duffel on the floor, kicked off his shoes, and flopped on the couch like it was his own place. I liked that about him, how comfortable he was here, how natural it felt having him in my space. "You been working out?" he asked, tossing a pillow at me after I came back from the kitchen with 2 sodas. I snorted. "Why, you finally noticing?" He grinned. "Nah, you're still scrawny, just less pathetic." I rolled my eyes and threw the pillow back, but I caught the way his gaze lingered. It was quick, barely a second, but I felt it. That pause, that something. Later, we ended up on the floor, wrestling. It wasn't weird for us. We've been doing that since we were 15, play fights that got too competitive. Laughter mixed with grunts and half-hearted punches. But this time, his hands stayed on me a little longer. His breath hitched when I pinned him down. Mine did too. He looked up at me, his chest rising fast beneath mine. Our eyes locked. I should have pulled away. Instead, I stayed there, heart pounding in my ears, suddenly aware of every inch of where our bodies met. "You gonna let me up?" he asked, voice low, almost breathless. I laughed it off. "Not until you admit I won." But my voice didn't sound right. It was shaky, like I was holding something back. Cole just stared at me for a moment, something flickering behind his eyes that I couldn't read. That night, I couldn't sleep. He'd crashed on the floor, sprawled out like he always did, one arm flung over his eyes. I watched him in the dark longer than I should have. I thought about how long I'd been pretending, how many moments I'd tucked away his smile when he wasn't looking, the heat in my chest when he touched me, the ache I felt when he left. I told myself it was just admiration, just friendship. But that night, something cracked open, and I knew, whether I wanted to or not, everything was about to change. There are certain people who come into your life and quietly become part of your architecture. Cole was like that, woven into my day-to-day in a way that made him feel permanent. In high school, if I was somewhere, he was probably there too. Lunch table, bus stop, bleachers, after practice. His presence had always felt easy. That's what made the rest of it so confusing. When we were younger, our friendship was built on challenges. Who could eat the most wings without crying? Who could hold their breath the longest in the pool? Who could bench more? He was always the louder one, the instigator, the center of attention. I was the anchor, quieter, sharper, watching him and seeing things he didn't always see in himself. There was this one time sophomore year. We were at this party, and Cole had had too much to drink. Some guy made a joke about him getting clingy when he's drunk. I remember the way Cole laughed it off, but his eyes dropped for a second, like the words hit someplace raw. He ended up falling asleep on my shoulder that night, in the back of someone's truck, his head resting against me like it belonged there. That's the kind of thing I remember. The world thinks guys like Cole are invincible, confident, untouchable, but I've seen the quiet moments, the cracks he tries to cover with jokes and swagger. And maybe that's why I care so much, because I know the real version of him. This weekend, having him here again, felt like trying to replay an old movie I didn't realize had a different ending. Saturday morning, he was in the kitchen, shirtless, cooking eggs like he owned the place. His hair was a mess, sticking up in all directions, and he kept humming some off-key pop song. "You look like you just rolled out of a hurricane," I said, leaning on the doorway. He turned, spatula in hand. "You love it?" I smirked. "I tolerate it." He tossed a piece of egg at me. I dodged, but barely. We ate at the counter, like always. Him perched on the stool, legs spread wide like he never learned how to sit properly. Me across from him, stealing glances when he looked away. I kept wondering if he noticed I wasn't acting normal, if he felt the shift too. "Remember the time we tried to camp in your backyard?" he said, grinning around a bite of toast. "You mean the time you cried because you thought a raccoon was a ghost?" He pointed his fork at me. "That was a real thing, man. It was howling. It was eating chips." We both laughed, and for a moment, it felt like the world was still simple. Just two guys, a shared history, and inside jokes that could carry us through anything. But then came the complication. My apartment's AC had been busted since Thursday. Maintenance swore they'd fix it Monday, which meant by Saturday night, the heat had become unbearable, even with the windows cracked. The place felt like a sauna. Cole tugged at the collar of his t-shirt, already slick with sweat. "Dude, how do you live like this?" I adapt. "Unlike you, I don't sweat like a waterfall." "You sure? Your face says otherwise." We both laughed again, but I was already thinking about the inevitable where we'd sleep. Usually, he took the couch, but the fan in the living room had stopped working too, which left only my room. One fan, one bed. "You can crash with me tonight," I said, trying to sound casual. "My fan's stronger." He didn't even hesitate. "Cool, we've shared worse." That was true, but that night, it didn't feel like those other times we changed in the dark. Him in basketball shorts and nothing else. Me in a tank and boxers. We both pretended it was normal, but the tension in the air felt real, like a string pulled taut between us. Waiting to snap, I lay on my side, facing the wall, trying to focus on anything but how close he was behind me. I could hear his breathing, feel the faint heat radiating from his body. Every time I shifted, the bed dipped, creaked slightly. "You still awake?" he whispered. "Yeah." A pause. Then, "You ever think about us? I mean, like where we'll be in 5 years?" I blinked, caught off guard. "Sometimes." "What do you see?" I hesitated. "Not sure, but I hope you're there." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, warm. He didn't reply right away, and when he did, his voice was low. "Yeah, me too." I turned to glance at him. He was lying on his back, staring at the ceiling. His profile in the dim glow of the streetlight was softer than I remembered. Thoughtful, almost nervous. "I don't think I tell you enough," he said, "but you're the only person I don't feel like I have to prove anything to." My throat tightened. I wanted to say something back, something that would match the weight of that confession, but the words caught. Instead, I said, "You don't." Another silence, but it wasn't empty. He reached out, barely brushing his fingers against my forearm. A small, almost accidental touch, but it stayed. That night, sleep didn't come easy. Not because of the heat, not really, but because something inside me was shifting. and I think something inside him was too. Sunday morning started with the hum of an idea, and the warmth of Cole's knee brushing mine beneath the breakfast table. He didn't move it. Neither did I. "I was thinking," he said, still chewing on his spoonful of cereal. "Let's get out for a bit. Your apartment's cooking us alive." I grinned. "You want to do something, or you just want to ride around in my car for the AC?" He smirked. "Is it wrong if I say both?" So we drove. Windows up, air blasting, playlist bouncing between nostalgic tracks from high school and songs we never admitted we liked out loud. The city was half asleep in the Sunday sun, roads quieter than usual. It felt like our own little world. Eventually, we ended up at Rock Hollow, a hiking trail about 30 minutes outside town. It had been our go-to spot during senior year, whenever we needed to vent or just disappear for a while. I hadn't been back in a long time. "You sure you want to hike in this heat?" I asked, locking the car. He shrugged. "It's mostly shaded. Besides, you could use the cardio." I shoved his shoulder as we started walking. "You act like I don't run. You jog, lightly, like a middle-aged dad." I rolled my eyes, but my smile stayed. The path was quiet and dappled with light through the canopy above. Cicadas cheered bid in somewhere in the distance. Water rushed faintly from the creek. It felt simple again, like old times. Almost about 20 minutes in, we reached the bluff, our old lookout spot. The rocks jutted out over the slope, worn smooth by years of weather. We both collapsed on the flat boulder like we used to, breathing heavy and sweat-slick. "God," Cole groaned, lying back with one arm across his eyes. "I forgot how much uphill there is." "You've gotten soft," he chuckled. "Nah, just conserving my energy. You'll see." But neither of us moved for a while. The silence between us was comfortable, but my thoughts weren't. I kept sneaking glances at him, his chest rising and falling slowly. The way his fingers absent-mindedly traced patterns on his stomach. I turned away quickly, pretending to look out at the trees. My heart was doing that thing again, beating faster than it should have been for someone who was just lying still. And then came the twist I wasn't prepared for. The weather turned. The sky, which had been pale blue just an hour before, now carried an uneasy dimness. The breeze picked up, rustling the trees like they were whispering secrets to each other. Cole sat up, frowning. "You feel that?" he asked. "Yeah, weird. They didn't call for anything today." But the wind kept pushing, and soon, a low growl of thunder rolled across the sky. No rain yet, but the kind of promise that made your gut tense. We stood quickly. "We should head back," I said. We picked up our pace, but the woods had shifted. What felt clear and familiar an hour ago now felt tighter, more closed in. Leaves swirled in bursts, and the trees groaned under the wind. The trail markers weren't as easy to spot. Somewhere along the way, we took a wrong turn. "Wait," Cole said, stopping. "Didn't we pass that fallen tree already?" I scanned the trees, but nothing looked right. "Yeah, I think we looped." The wind howled louder. We were officially lost. "No signal," I muttered, holding my phone up. "Same," he said. "Perfect." We looked at each other, and for the first time, Cole didn't joke. His jaw tensed slightly. "We need to find some kind of shelter until it passes." Eventually, we found a thicket of low trees, with a large boulder forming a partial overhang. It wasn't ideal, but it would block the wind at least. We ducked under it, sitting close on the narrow patch of dry ground beneath the rock. His arm brushed mine again. This time, it stayed. "You okay?" I asked, watching the way he kept staring out at the trees. He nodded. "Just not a fan of being stuck. Triggers something." I softened. "Hey, we'll get out of here. We're not far from the parking lot. Probably just missed a turn." He nodded again, but didn't say anything. In the quiet, I felt his shoulder drop slightly against mine, barely perceptible, but it felt like trust. His thigh pressed against mine. No movement away. No awkward adjustment. and then he whispered, "Remember when we used to fake wrestle in the locker room after games?" I swallowed. "Yeah." He smirked faintly. "I think you let me win most of the time, you think?" I said, trying to smile past the thump in my chest. "I carried you half those games. That was charity." He laughed softly, the sound vibrating between us. His eyes met mine, and in that moment, I wanted to say everything. I wanted to tell him how often I'd replayed those wrestling matches in my head, not for the win, but for the feel of his hands gripping my arms, the sound of his breath when he laughed against my neck. The way those moments had started meaning more to me than they should have. But I didn't say any of it. I just looked at him, my throat tight. Then he shifted, lifting his arm to rest behind me on the rock wall. It was casual, automatic, but suddenly my back was brushing against his forearm, and when he didn't move it, I didn't either. The tension was unbearable in the best and worst way. "You're shaking," he said softly, his voice right beside my ear. "I'm not cold." He didn't answer, just sat there with me, letting the silence stretch between the lines of what we were too scared to say. The wind kept howling outside, but in that narrow space, the world had narrowed to his presence beside me, his warmth, his quiet breath, the electricity of a hand almost touching my waist. And all I could think was, if I lean in just a little, would he meet me halfway? I don't remember who leaned in first. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was him. Or maybe the space between us had just grown too small to ignore. The weight of everything unsaid, pulling us toward the only answer we hadn't dared to voice. Our lips met softly, tentative, careful, as if we were both afraid the moment would break if we moved too fast. His breath caught against my mouth, and I felt the hesitation tremble in his body, matched only by the pounding of my heart. But neither of us pulled away. When we finally did, it wasn't abrupt. It was slow, our foreheads still close, our eyes just inches apart. Both of us unsure what to say now that we'd crossed the line that had been drawn years ago. He smiled first, a real one, small, crooked, kind. The kind I hadn't seen in a while. "Well," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "guess we're not just wrestling anymore." I laughed quietly at first, then with a warmth that bubbled up from deep inside me. Yeah, that line kind of got body slammed. We stayed like that for a few minutes, still pressed close under the rock as the wind outside began to settle, a few leaves skittering across the ground. Cole looked down at my hand, then slid his fingers over mine, his thumb tracing the back of my palm like it was something fragile. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted. "I mean this, us. I didn't think I could feel something like this about another guy." My chest tightened, not from fear, but from how deeply I understood him. "You don't have to have it figured out," I said. "I don't either, but I've felt this for a long time. I just didn't think you'd ever." He nodded slowly. "I didn't know I could feel this way about you and still feel like myself." I squeezed his hand. "Maybe that is who you are? The version of you that lets someone in." He let out a breath, like he'd been holding it for years. "So what now?" I smiled. "We get out of the woods first. Then maybe. I make you pancakes tomorrow morning, and you pretend they're good." His eyebrows lifted. "Pancakes, that's your big post-confession plan." "It's tradition," I shrugged. "Besides, I have heart-shaped cookie cutters." Wow, romance and poor culinary choices. I'm in deep already. I laughed again, and he leaned his head against my shoulder, his body softening beside mine in a way I'd never seen before, like whatever armor he'd been carrying had finally dropped. After a few more minutes, the wind died down enough for us to climb out and try the trail again. This time, we stayed closer than ever. Our hands brushed more than once. Neither of us pulled away. The path still looked unfamiliar, but I wasn't worried anymore. When we found the parking lot, the relief was real, but so was the electricity, still crackling between us. We got in the car, both of us quiet, not because we had nothing to say, but because it didn't feel like silence anymore. It felt like something being built. As I started the engine, Cole glanced at me. Double quotes, so, pancakes. Tomorrow, he said, trying to sound casual. I nodded. Unless you're scared. He turned in his seat and grinned, terrified, but mostly of how bad they'll be. You'll eat every bite, I warned. Oh, I will. I just might need to wrestle you for the syrup. There was something in the way he said wrestle this time, a teasing glint, a shared memory already forming. His hand slid over to rest on my knee, light and brief, but full of meaning. My fingers tightened on the wheel. As we pulled onto the road, the sky had cleared. The sun peeked through the tree line, and everything looked washed, new. He leaned back against the seat, looking at me like something had settled in him, and I felt it too, that sense that maybe things weren't going to get simpler, but they were finally real. We were driving toward something new, and this time, we weren't pretending anymore. The next morning, sunlight poured through the blinds and spilled across the hardwood floor like honey. I stood barefoot in the kitchen, flipping a lumpy, half-burnt pancake that barely held its shape, wearing the same t-shirt from the day before, and a pair of boxers. The room smelled like butter, toasted flour, and nerves. I heard footsteps behind me. You really went with the heart-shaped cutter. Cole's voice was still husky with sleep, but he was grinning when I turned around. Tradition, I said, motioning to the plate. Don't judge it till you taste it. He came closer, the hem of his tank top brushing against his shorts, his hair messy and sticking up on one side. There was something impossibly soft about him, in the morning, and guarded and calm, like the storm inside him had finally stilled. Cole picked up a pancake, tore off a bite with his fingers, and chewed slowly. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "This is, honestly, inedible." I smacked his arm with the spatula. "Rude. I'm kidding," he said, laughing as he grabbed a fork. "Kind of." I rolled my eyes and set the rest of the pancakes on the table. We sat across from each other, knees touching under the small breakfast table, like we'd done 100 times before, but everything had changed, and yet nothing had. There was still the easy banter, the quiet teasing, the laughter, but now there was also the unspoken promise beneath it all, a closeness that didn't need explanation anymore. He finished a second pancake, then leaned back in his chair, stretching. "So, what do we do now?" "You mean after surviving a near-death forest experience and a culinary tragedy?" He chuckled. "Yeah, after that." I paused, chewing on my bottom lip. "We don't have to know everything right now. I don't need a label. I just want—" I trailed off, looking down at the syrup-stained plate. "I want this. You, us, whatever this becomes." His voice softened. "Yeah, me too." He reached across the table and took my hand in his fingers tracing slow circles over my knuckles. The kind of touch that didn't ask permission, it just felt right. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure." "When did you know?" I smiled, the answer already sitting in my chest. "That night you fell asleep in the back of Danny's truck. You leaned against me like I was safe. Like you trusted me with something even you didn't understand yet. I think I realized I wanted to be that person for you, always." Cole's eyes didn't leave mine. He nodded, lips parted, like he wanted to say something but didn't need to. Sometimes silence is just another way of saying I feel it too. Later, when he was packing up his bag, I handed him something, a wrinkled photo we'd taken on our senior hike. The last time we'd been to Rock Hollow together, us on the bluff, arms thrown around each other, smiling like we had forever ahead of us. "You kept this?" he asked. I shrugged. "It's been in my desk since graduation." He looked at it for a long moment, then tucked it into the side pocket of his bag. "I'm keeping it this time." Before he left, we stood by the door, the space between us humming again, not with tension, but with something sweeter. Something solid. "You're still terrible at pancakes," he said, "and you're still terrible at compliments." We both laughed. Then he leaned in, not hesitating. Not searching for, since and kissed me. This time slower, deeper, his hand resting on the side of my neck, like he didn't want to let go just yet. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. I'll call you when I get back to campus. You better. And hey, he said, stepping back toward the door, next time we wrestle, no shirts. Deal. I smirked. He winked, then slipped out the door. And I stood there for a while, barefoot, heart full, watching the sun spill across the quiet hallway. The house was silent again, but it didn't feel empty. It felt like something new had begun. Not loud or dramatic, just quiet and real. A soft start to something that might just last.